probably thinking of an obvious objection at this point. You know, why did Jesus go up to Jerusalem that last time? If he went up regularly for all the festivals, let's say, what happened this one time that never happened any other time? If he only went up once, and we're certain he did go up at least once this time, what happened then that never happened before? Why did Jesus go to Jerusalem? Did he go to get himself killed? And that was not that difficult, to get yourself killed under the Roman imperial control. What did he go up to Jerusalem to do? And of course, I'm not trying to read Jesus' mind. I'm trying to figure out his intention by what happened. Did he go up to get himself killed? Well, you've got major objections to that, because first of all, he doesn't stay in Jerusalem. Dark nights, even with a full moon, crowded cities, it'd be easy to kind of get killed in the crowd. He stays in Bethany. He goes out every night around the hill to Bethany. He's not even staying in Jerusalem. That's wise. If you want to get yourself killed, stay in Jerusalem. Stay with all these crowded streets. Secondly, again and again, as you read through Mark's Gospel, on what we call Sunday, Palm Sunday for us, on Monday, on Tuesday, on Wednesday of that first week, you keep getting the refrain, the crowd is on the side of Jesus. The authorities want to move against him, of course, because they know how dangerous he is. Not violently dangerous, but dangerous to Roman law and order. And again you get, but the crowd was on his side. In other words, he's protected by the crowd. He's got a protective screen around him from the people. All the evidence that I can see is this is not a person trying to get himself killed. He knows, of course, that this is dangerous business. He knows what happened to John the Baptist. It doesn't take divine foreknowledge or even prophetic insight to know I could get killed. But everything you can see that's operational there is not to get yourself killed. So what's Jesus going up to Jerusalem to do? He's going up to make a double demonstration. Yeah, I'm using the word that we all know from the 60s and the 70s, a double demonstration against Roman imperial power and conservative theological collaboration with it. Jesus is going to the capital city of his people to make a double-linked protest against imperial violence and conservative religious collaboration with it. He's going up to protest, in plain language, the collusion between the Roman governor Pilate and the Jewish high priest Caiaphas. And by the way, it's not necessary to demonize either of them. Both of them are doing their job, you might say, the Roman job and the collaboration job. And Rome has set up a system where the high priest can be hired and fired by the governor. Not a good system, by the way. So if Caiaphas doesn't collaborate with Pilate, Pilate will simply fire him and put in another high priest. But it's a double demonstration, quite deliberate, against Rome and collaboration with it. Two events, and I want to hold them together, though. Mark puts them, say, on what we call Palm Sunday and Monday, to keep them separate. Each of them involves an action by Jesus. He does something, and a quotation from a prophetic voice from the Old Testament that explains it. So action and prophetic citation. The first one, it's what we call the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Terribly unfortunate adjective. It's an anti-triumphal entry into Jerusalem. Before Passover, for example, Pilate would have come up with extra troops from the coast. These are not legionary troops, these are auxiliary troops, local troops. He'd come up from Caesarea Maritima on the coast. He'd come up probably through the western gate into Jerusalem to have extra troops there for Passover. So you can imagine, and I don't know about the timing, but I would imagine if you're having a demonstration and you know what you're doing, you try and get the timing exactly right. Jesus is coming in with his people from the east. So Pilate is coming in, as it were, from the west. Jesus is coming in from the east. He's coming in on a donkey. Now, it's almost like a dangerous lampoon. Without the slightest doubt, Pilate is coming in on a horse. Jesus is coming in on a donkey. And it may be even worse than that. In Matthew's Gospel, quoting from Zechariah, come back to that in a minute, Matthew says he's on a donkey and the foal. Now, you could think that Matthew is kind of silly and Jesus is straddling the donkey and the foal, or you could think we're dealing with a nursing mother donkey. Her little colt is trotting along beside her, which means that Jesus is not on a horse, he's not on a mule, he's not on a male donkey, he's not even on a female donkey, he's on a female nursing donkey. I mean, everyone can see, the colt is right there. It's not, well, you know, he's come all the way from Galilee and he's dead tired, he just needed a donkey for the last mile. No, he's riding on a nursing donkey. The message is clear, even if you're just kind of peeking through the crowd. He's on a nursing donkey. And the quotation that's given is the quotation from Zachary. Zachary 9 is written about the same time that Alexander on his great war horse is coming down the Levant. He's destroyed Tyre, he's destroyed Gaza. Everyone knows who he is. Everyone knows how he enters a city. He enters through shattered gates and broken walls and 3 days of open slaughter allowed to his troops. That's the way he comes into a city. And Zachary says the Messiah enters a city on a donkey to put an end to war and violence. And that's what Jesus is doing. He's reenacting a prophecy, he's making it a prophecy as it were, that the Messiah enters the city on a donkey. The complete, almost lampooning antithesis of the conquering hero entering the city. And if you ask yourself, well, why isn't he dead within 10 minutes? Why do they tolerate this? The crowd. So when you're reading Mark's Gospel, notice that Jesus is never doing all of this by himself. The protective screen of the crowd are there, so they have to figure, if we go after him, a riot. Is it worth it, or should we just wait? Now if we move, it's a riot. So Jesus expects to get away with it, and he does get away with it. He is not dead by the night of what we call Palm Sunday. He's made his entry into Jerusalem. And as I said again, and I insist on it, he's going to be smart enough to get out of Jerusalem to Bethany every night. So the first demonstration has been made against Roman power, Roman injustice, Roman violence, and the normalcy of human civilization that works by violence and victory and the war horse. In Mark's Gospel, he goes into the temple, looks around and leaves. So Mark wants to connect the gate to Jerusalem and the temple, but Jesus is not going to do anything. You don't conduct a demonstration at evening. Everyone's gone. You wait till the next day. So Jesus goes the night to Bethany and on the next day. We have what is called the cleansing of the temple. And the term cleansing of the temple is about as bad a title as triumphal entry. The temple did not need cleansing. There was nothing wrong with anything that was going on in the temple. The temple was supported, of course, by free will offerings. It couldn't be enforced from all over the Roman world, from Jewish families who sent money to support the temple, from pilgrims who would come there, either Jewish pilgrims or pious pagan pilgrims who would come to the temple and want to make a donation, of course. And the function of the money changers is not to do anything evil, not to defraud. That's simply Christian anti-Semitism creeping in there. Their job is to change the money legally, openly, publicly, officially, into whatever currency the temple would accept. And you want to make your donations, and that's the way it's done. But of course, if they weren't there, the whole fiscal basis of the temple is gone. So if you want to make a demonstration, you could overturn the tables of the money changers. And what would you have done? Well, you'd have done the same thing as going into a draft board during the Vietnam War and spreading ketchup, as it were, on the draft cards. Have you closed down the war? No. The Pentagon? No. The military? No. All you've done is messed up the draft office and you've had a demonstration. So overturning the temple fiscal basis doesn't stop the temple, doesn't even stop business, probably just annoys tremendously those people. And when Jesus makes a little whip and drives the animals out. And notice, by the way, the whip is only in John because the animals are only in John. He doesn't use a whip on people. He drives the animals out. So if, then in other words, if Jesus is doing this action, what he is doing is closing down the temple, symbolically, prophetically. He doesn't do it, of course, really. He just doesn't cleanse the temple. He sort of abolishes it. Because as far as the temple has become the place of collaboration with Rome, it's no longer the house of God. There is nothing wrong with the temple in itself. There's nothing wrong with blood sacrifice in itself. There's nothing wrong with the money changing in itself. But the temple is now no longer the house of God, it's the seat of collaboration. How do I know that? Because, once again, the quotation. The quotation is from Jeremiah chapter 7. What happens there is Jeremiah is told by God, stand in front of the temple, warn people that if they do not practice justice outside and think that by getting to the temple and its sacrifices I'm quite happy with them, they'll be deluded. If they get outside and practice injustice, think, oh, the temple, we're here, we're safe. I will destroy the temple, says God. I won't let them use it as a safe house, a refuge, a den of thieves. Now, a den of thieves is not where thieves do their thieving. It's where they run for safety, a safe house, when they've thieved somewhere else. So it's not that anyone is thieving with the money change. That's got nothing to do with it. It's that the temple has become a refuge from justice. As long as we worship God, everything's fine. So we know what Jesus is doing because of the quotation that goes with it. We understand Zechariah 9 with the entrance. We understand Jeremiah chapter 7. And by the way, Jeremiah almost loses his life for that crack at the temple. Almost is put to death for it, for even daring to say that God could abandon the temple. So Jesus performs two great symbolic acts. And he's protected again by the crowd. Monday night he's not killed either. Day after day he's getting away with it. And of course, it looks like, as you're reading the story in Mark, that he's going to get away with it. Because by Wednesday morning, the authorities are saying, we daren't go after him, there'll be a riot. So let him go back to Galilee, get out of here. Don't make a move now, there'll be a riot. And that's, of course, when in the story, you get the story of Judas. And Judas tells him, I can show you where he is at night. That's the whole point of what happens. As long as Jesus is out there, secure in Bethany, it's too dangerous to go after him. But he has to get from Jerusalem to Bethany. What if we could intercept him on the way? So the whole logic of Marcus's story, Mark, is to get Jesus in the dark on the way to Bethany. Now, when you look at all of that, once again, Pilate got it exactly right. And you can see it in the parables that Mark tells and John tells, John's Gospel. Mark tells a contrast between Barabbas and Jesus. Barabbas is a violent revolutionary and he's in jail along with all of those who fought with him. Pilate has grabbed him and all his followers. That's the way you handle a violent revolutionary. Jesus over here is a non-violent revolutionary, in jail, of course, but none of his followers. So the parable of Barabbas and Jesus, Mark's great example, again confirms Jesus is a non-violent revolutionary. You get the same message from John. The great interchange between Jesus and Pilate, it's a parable. I don't think it actually ever happened in real life, but it summarizes what they stand for. Jesus says to Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. And we all know that quotation. My kingdom is not of this world. And we tend to stop at that point. And that makes the whole thing ambiguous, because then it could mean, don't worry, Pilate, my kingdom is not of this world. It's about heaven up there. You take care of the earth, I'll take care of heaven. Or my kingdom is not of this world, it's about the future. And then Jesus finishes it. My kingdom is not of this world. If it were of this world, my companions would be in here fighting to get me out. Therefore, Pilate, your kingdom is based on violence. My kingdom, God's kingdom, is based on nonviolent resistance to evil.